Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Brushes and Bunnies, and today I'm going to be drawing with these €1, here it's called bunter Stift, which means like colored pencils in German. And I got these at the Euro store here in like my neighborhood area. So it's kind of a cool tube. It's like a metallic tube or metal tube with a pencil sharpener on the top. And if we go to open it up, you're gonna see that there's all kinds of colors on the inside. Whoop! Now the colors are pretty generic colors. You can see that they're not the highest quality, and they're pretty bright in terms of like the color variety that I have here. I don't have like good tones to work with really, so I have to make something work with what I got. So yeah, these are the colors, and yeah, they're kind of like a no-name brand, obviously. And the purpose of this challenge is just to draw something and use the colors that I have and to make something out of it, just to show you guys that you don't really need to have the highest quality or the most expensive art supplies ever just to make something. You guys can just basically make art with what you have and what is cheaply available in the stores. So without further ado, let's get started. So before I started the coloring process, I just quickly did a sketch of the character I wanted to draw, and then I aligned with my Faber-Castell PITT Artist pen in black, the black fine liner, which I always use. I just use this for the general outline. And then later on in the actual drawing, I did also use a white gel pen. So that's the only other materials that I did use apart from the $1 or €1 colored pencils. As for the pencils themselves, I think we probably all know the kind of quality that they are. Like, picture yourself at the restaurant, and sometimes these restaurants, they will have like colored pencils that children can play with and color on the coloring mat. These were a little bit kind of like below that level of quality, I would say. The ones at the restaurant are much better. So this was a bit of a hard thing to do because as I was drawing with these pencils, they weren't really pigmented, and I had to draw quite hard, and of course they were wax based, so I was getting a little bit of a wax bloom where I just couldn't, you know, put layers on top of layers and kind of mix and blend the colors together. But again, I don't know, I shouldn't be complaining. They were just $1 or €1, and I think for kind of like this challenge in terms of showing what you can do and how you can color things with a very, like, the cheapest quality you can find. Like, literally, this is like one step above from like it being free. It's so cheap. I think that it did a pretty good job regardless, especially around the eyes. So you're gonna notice that I did use some blues, some pinks, some greens, and then later on I also did a little bit of yellow. And I think that I did a good job of kind of making the eyes really pop. The biggest challenge of this challenge itself was actually the skin. I couldn't really draw the skin properly just because there was a lack of color. I only had pinks and browns, and there was kind of nothing in between. So I just decided to use some pinks to kind of highlight the areas where the shading would be, like around the eyes, the nose, and the cheek area, and a little bit under the neck as well. So, and with this sort of thing, with these sort of materials, you gotta kind of be creative, which is also the fun part of working with something that you wouldn't normally work with. With something like the hair, later on you're going to notice I work on the hair and I combine different colors together. So actually with this set of pencil crayons, I noticed that, for example, the red color was much more potent, so it had much more pigment and it was going on the paper much better, whilst the brown was just like, it was like drawing with wood. It was really strange. So I had a little bit of a quality difference with the different colors, and that's why I did her hair red as well, just because it stood out much better. And for the hair, I just kind of piled together the red, the brown, the fuchsia color or the burgundy color, and then a little bit of the pink, as well as black. So I just tried to layer things, but it just wasn't really working. So you're gonna notice that there's a lot of white coming through, and that's just because of, you know, the pencils just really don't cover the paper. But this isn't meant to be an actual product review because obviously I'm just drawing with the cheapest supplies I could ever get. The point of this video is just to show you guys that you can really draw with anything. You do not need the most expensive, you know, Faber-Castell or even the Prismacolors. You can just draw with anything you find, whether it's school supplies or dollar store supplies, Euro store supplies, or yeah, just stuff that you find in your basement, maybe that is a couple years older, maybe your parents had it. I know I drew a lot with my dad's old markers and pastels, and I just experimented with that. So for those of you guys who are starting out in art, I would suggest just getting familiar with some of the cheaper stuff and working with them to experiment and to just try to find your way and what you like to work with, and test things out, test different colors out, test different types of materials out, because maybe you don't like drawing with pencil crayons. Maybe you would prefer to draw with pastels or with markers. So there's really no point to buy the most expensive things, especially if you're like a kind of a first time trier in terms of working with this material. So try out the cheaper stuff and see what it does for you. The cheaper art supplies can also offer you a little bit of a bonus in terms of kind of creating your mock-up. So it will help you, rather than using your most expensive art supplies, maybe you want to do a pre-sketch, a pre-mock-up of your final painting, how you want it to look like. Use the cheaper stuff to kind of choose the colors, to see kind of the direction that you want to go in, to just build your mock-up with. This is what I do a lot with markers. I will use some of my cheaper markers, and I will just kind of fill in the colors to see what would work with what. Will the red work with this blue, or you know, just to kind of see how I want the picture to turn out. And rather than kind of wasting my good ink or my good markers on this mock-up, I would use the cheaper one. So of course this depends on the types of colors. If you want specific colors, maybe you have to use your more expensive products, but typically I think that the cheaper ones do help a lot, especially if it's just a super rough kind of mock-up that you want to create. That being said, I think that this challenge was a really little fun one. It was a fun doodle to make, and it was actually really interesting to try something new in terms of a different type of like a cheaper quality brand. I typically don't go for the cheaper stuff anymore just because I am totally sold on Faber-Castell polychromos and of course my other types of markers and watercolor brands. So I really don't have a need to go to the cheaper stuff because I really know what I like now. That being said though, I did buy, alongside these cheap colored pencils, I did buy a very cheap set of watercolors. So I think I'm gonna try that out in a different video. It's gonna be like a dollar store kind of watercolor set video. I haven't used like the really cheap watercolor sets in so long, so I'm really curious to see how that's gonna work out. I'm probably gonna do like a mixed media portrait like I always do, but using the cheaper watercolors and maybe even the cheap colored pencils. We're gonna see. Maybe that'll be a cool video to do, like a comparison maybe. But anyways, I'd like to thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this quick little video. Do like this video if you did like it, and comment below on if you guys use any sort of cheap kind of art supplies. What do you guys use? What do you like? And yeah, just let me know. I'd like to know what kind of brands you guys use, so maybe I could test them out as well. And again, subscribe if you haven't already. I do a lot of art videos in general, and yeah, live streams and all kinds of other stuff. So do subscribe, and we will see each other very, very soon. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day.